Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. Another podcast here, episode of the Better Outcomes Training podcast. Here, not where I usually am, as you can tell. I'm in a hotel room in Bali. Not sorry at all. Paulie, how are you?
I'm very good, cuz. I'm very good. I'm still Melbourne-based, mate, but eternally envious of you. Tell everybody what you're up to with your jet-setting lifestyle, my man. What's going on? Where are you coming in from?
I'm sending support packages back to Melbourne because I hear you're all snowed in there. Yeah.
Well, quite. Yes, quite.
Yes. That's what I heard. Rub it in. No, I've been working pretty hard the last 6 months, and one of the goals in place was to jump on a plane with my lovely wife, who's been long suffering, putting up with me, and we've head to Bali for a few weeks more than normal, but a few weeks, and get a little bit of rest and relaxation and a few other bits and pieces under our belt. That's why I'm in my good dress shirt today, and I've got my glasses on because I've gone and written a whole heap of stuff there, and my handwriting's gone to the dogs as well. How's your week been, Paulie?
Yeah, good. It was a good week this week. Had a 2-day delivery virtually, which was quite fascinating, and was done via Teams rather than Zoom. And normally when things are going really well, it's kind of like you just think, something's lurking, something's going to come and get me, You think everything is going, and I've had a touch wood. I've had a phenomenal few months just with workshops and phenomenal clients, and so many new inquiries for business and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, if there was challenges we could have, all of the challenges came back up on this week. They absolutely did. It was like a pincer movement. It was like,
oh really?
It was like all of if you look at life like, you're unlucky maybe 3% of the time, or 5% of the time, or 10% of the time, whatever it is. And it was like for the last few months, everything's just been really running well. And all of those 5% have all added up, and they're all waiting and lurking. And it was like, okay, get them. And then they came, and it was a left field, right field. It was electricity going out. It was madness, man. But we thank goodness I've got obviously a phenomenal team to work with, and a lot of experience in the team, so we were able to pull it off and give clients just a phenomenal learning experience. And the feedback, which is obviously so important, that they had a great learning experience, was awesome. So all's well that ends well, as they say. So let's hope for that.
Excellent. I have been through times in my life like that where you've got a bit of a purple patch going on, so to speak. Everything's going pretty well.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you get that feeling, and you're kind of looking around wondering, where the big hit's coming from. So
absolutely.
And then when it lands at once, it's like, oh gosh, could have done without that.
That was literally this week. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe all of the challenges that came up at the same time. It was just like, how, sometimes you just think people are messing with you, but that was the situation. So we got it done, we got it through, and hopefully we've got some good luck for the rest of the year, maybe.
Oh, that's well, I hope so. I really do.
I hope for it, but preparing for more challenges. So there we go.
That's it. Hope for the best and plan for the worst is a good way to think, and happens a lot of time in life. You're trucking along and you just about get to the point where you're bored. Like, this is all a bit too easy, and then whammo, everything lands at once,
Yeah.
So I'm sure it'll come back, bro. I'm sure it'll come back and find us. Now, hey, if you don't mind, we are going to talk about one of the other common problems that seems to pop up in in workplaces these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been crashing into this one myself quite a bit lately. It's lack of or poor communication in the workplace. And I want to talk about, well, what can cause it, how common it is, because I think it's quite a bit more common than a lot of people think. I think bad communication tends to be the norm sometimes.
Yeah.
What bad communication can lead to, and also what we can do to improve it. So the whole lack of communication, I mean, not just the workplace, it can be in everyday life as well. Any relationships you've got, it can be, you can have your moments of poor communication. You're not expressing yourself properly, and it leads to conflict.
Mate, listen, we're qualified to talk about business on this channel, not qualified to talk about life. So we've been told, okay?
True.
Just so we're both aware of that, right?
As I keep getting reminded by my darling wife, like, what are you talking about? So the causes, Paulie, what are the causes of some poor communication or lack of communication in the workplace from your experience?
Yeah, listen, I think that this is one of the biggest. Well, it's a huge issue out there, and I've got to tell you this. I mean, being very broad here, I've got to say that poor communication. We'll get into the cause a little bit later. I think that the poor communication is the foundation, or is the cause of, I think, most conflict in the workplace environment. I'm convinced of this. I think that poor communication is very often the core, something that sets something off. Okay, so you can obviously, if you have people that you work with, maybe there's a little bit of conflict and what have you, and let's say both parties are well-meaning. Okay, of course, you think if you have conflict with people, you think they're always the baddies. But if we're honest about this, we've always been everybody's been the baddie in somebody else's story.
Oh yeah.
But I see in professional environments, I see a huge amount of issues coming from poor communication. And I'll tell you this, Cuz, I don't even believe that it's intentional. I really don't believe it's intentional. I think that people, firstly, we don't think well. I think a lot of the time, as well as I do. I mean, we've spoken about this so much, sort of the power of sort of how you think and what have you. But the biggest challenge I think that people have is that we don't think well. We're not used to thinking well, and until you start looking into and learning how to think properly, or how to think well, then very often we're just at the whim of our own emotions very often. And I think that that's a byproduct of, I think our communication very often is a byproduct of our thought processes. So if we haven't learned to think well, and by that, I mean illustrations you and I have spoken about with regards to feeding that bad wolf and focusing all the times you've messed up on the imposter syndrome and all of that fixed mindset stuff. Very often, I think that is the natural default setting, because the human brain is designed to keep us alive rather than to keep us happy. But I think that because we are not really often taught how to think well, I think that has a knock-on effect in our communication, because I believe that the way we communicate, very often the way we communicate will give us an indication as to how people think. We talk all the time about meeting your target audience and their view of the world. And the important aspect there is to understand that the best way you can be able to do that is to listen to people's words. But the thing is, I think that human beings have a real shortcoming when it comes to active listening. But also, I think we have a real challenge with, firstly, being able to think well, and secondly, being able to actually express ourselves in a good way, in a way that really resonates with our target audience. And it's a challenging thing. It really is, because, again, I think maybe, if we look at sort of how we are, our processes and how we go through certain things, I think, you go to school and you learn how to think maybe about maths, and maybe you read some old books on poetry, and, as you have to do as your classwork, and you learn about geography and history and all of these different topics. So it's kind of maybe you are, you're learning things, but I don't think we're taught that often to really how to be able to think well. And I'll tell you, actually, this is actually, I think, one of the reasons why there's been such an explosion recently in people going back to Stoic philosophy. Because Stoic philosophy has got a lot to do with focusing on what's in your area of control and what's in your area of influence, and less about focusing on what's outside. But it also gives you structures for how to use your mind. And I've got some theories on that. I think it would be if more people learned how to think like a lot of the Stoic thought processes. I think there's a lot of wisdom that comes from that. I think firstly from the self-preservation point of view. I think secondly from an anxiety point of view, because if you're focusing on things that are outside your area of control all the time, it becomes a big issue. But then thirdly as well is how we communicate. Because if you can get your thoughts in order, if you can get your thoughts in process, if you can choose your thought processes and work on them, and again, folks, it's not easy to do, obviously, but the more you can actually do that, the more you can start really understanding what's going on with yourself, and you get your own self-talk right. But secondly, you start understanding that people perceive things in different ways. And because of that, you become very selective with your words and what you say and what you do. Particularly, I mean, I know we're focusing on communication here. So I think that that's a big, big thing. When we start really being able to be aware of our thought processes and then start thinking in ways where we can actually, that becomes really conducive to helping our situation, then I think very often our communication can improve as well. And I see a huge amount of conflict that comes from the workplace environment where people are, well, let's take people who are short with other people. So if I'm going through a rough time, you ask me a question, I snap back at you. It's like that causes conflict between the two of us, especially if neither of us are in a good frame of mind to start with. But then, resentment starts to develop there. But then let's go to the other side here. And let's say that I'm working in a particular business, and that particular business, it's a particular industry, and I go and speak with somebody who's from outside of my industry, maybe a client or an external stakeholder, and I use my terminology from my industry with that decision maker who's not an expert in what I'm talking about. Then simple words that I use in my industry can have a very different meaning to my target audience. Yep. Does that resonate with what I'm saying here?
It does, especially I've bumped up against it a little bit this week in my own thinking. I've had a chance to step away from having a pretty intense six months.
Absolutely.
So I've had time to step back and think myself. And I think one of the things I've realized is that your work can kind of become all-encompassing and be kind of like a comfort zone.
Yep, absolutely.
As well.
Yep.
Which can, and being in a comfort zone, it can make you tend to not learn or not process things, the comfort zone instead of a growth mindset. Therefore, sometimes I find people don't really want to think for themselves. They'd rather be told what to do in certain circumstances. And you can fall into that trap very easily at work. It's so simple to sit back and wait for stuff to come to you rather than chase it. Especially if you're going through a hard time. I've said over the years, especially with a few guys I've worked with, your whole life can't be chaos. So if you've got a chaotic workplace or chaos at work, or you've got chaos at home, you can't have both. Absolutely. You need an option. So maybe if there's stuff going on outside the workplace and this is the person's comfort zone, it can be a completely different mindset to what one of their compatriots is, one of your workmates is, and they can get a clash from there. So I agree with you about how we think. Learning to think for yourself, and especially thinking about what's going on around you and what other people are trying to say when it comes to active listening. Like we always say, a lot of people listen to reply as opposed to listening to what you're saying. And you can nearly see them switch off. Sometimes I've watched a lot of people recently, I'm really becoming aware of this, when there's a conversation or a slight disagreement, or two people are coming at it from different sides, and you can nearly see it in their eyes. When one person's talking, you can watch the other person and you can nearly see it in their eyes and their body language, and they're like, this person's only halfway through what they're saying. The other person's like, I can reply to that, and then switches off. The rest of the words just bounce off.
Yeah.
and it just goes downhill from there. So yes, I believe. And as for Stoic thinking, and like you spoke about, keeping your replies in context.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to keep it as simple as possible sometimes to get your message across, which is a hard thing to do. I'm trying to break something down and get the message across as simply as you can while still including all the relevant information.
Yeah.
That's a talent. That's a skill in itself. So
I think it absolutely is. And I think I've heard it just when you said that to me now, that I've heard, and maybe I was listening to Reply, but I've heard a great comment or something along the lines of, if you can't explain your concept in a simple enough way that a child could understand it, you don't know your concept well. And
yes.
I really like that, because the thing is you can take a complex concept and somebody can explain it to you so you understand it, but then you go away and apply it. You have to get a deeper level of learning. But then when you get that deeper level of learning, the more context you have around that particular topic, the more variations you have of ways that you can actually communicate that in different ways that people can get it. So sometimes you might be dealing with somebody who's a very logical thinker, a very process-driven thinking person, and you have to communicate very differently to somebody who's maybe a big picture, senior level decision maker who's not detail orientated like that. So I think that's a beautiful insight with regards to wisdom. If you know your topic well, I really believe that, and I think it's something that you talk to people who are at the top of their game of what they do, and they are such a joy to talk to about their topic because effectively firstly they're so passionate about what they're talking about, but secondly they're able to really deliver that information in a way that resonates with you. It's like, okay, we got somebody who's passionate about what they're talking about, and they're a world-class communicator.
Especially the ones who can. I've known quite a few over the years. Yourself, my brother, Doctor of Chemistry. You can ask them a question about their area of expertise, and as they go to reply, you can actually see them changing gears and trying to not so much slow it down, but to break it down into the most simplest possible form to deliver that I'll understand.
Yeah.
Like the layman will understand. And that's where I think true genius lies. True genius lies in making things simpler or keeping them simple, because anyone can make something harder. It doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to make something more difficult. I can do that easily. But when it comes to explaining and delivering your point or delivering relevant information, keeping it as simple as possible. There's been quite a few instances over the recent past that we've bumped into at work from very technical, logical people trying to, and they're trying to deliver us a message about a certain job, and they'll miss a crucial bit of information, and it will just set us back so much. And I think it's because of the fact that because they are an expert in their field, that they don't see that as a crucial bit of information.
Yeah.
They see it as common knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they don't bother telling you, because they don't want to sound like maybe they either don't see it or they don't want to say it, because then the person they're saying it to is going to go, oh, duh, of course.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And
you miss this crucial bit of information. It's like, oh, man, come on. So there's that too, coupled with active, the not so common active listening. I think that's where a lot of problems arise from that exact kind of situation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I think with regards to causes, I think that's a massive point there. But then again, certain words that are commonly used, could have different meanings to different people, and then that's why I see this a lot in the corporate training world massively. Frequently or popularly used words, as we talk about communication, not able to pronounce or using these weird words. But, if you use a particular term that could have a multitude of different meanings, and I'm expecting one thing and you're expecting to deliver something else,
Yes.
You can imagine that, if I'm expecting, okay, so you say to me something like, and I'm just being stereotypical here, but you say, Paul, I'll have it to you as soon as possible. And it's like, in my mind, if I'm thinking as soon as possible is the end of the day, because you give me some context around that, and I say then to the person who's waiting on me, I say, I'll be with us by the end of the day. And I come back to you and say, cuz, it's the end of the day. Where is it? No, it'll probably be the end of the week. It's like, come on, man, I didn't have that context. But now it's more inflamed because effectively I've given my word to somebody else. And now I'm thinking, well, why didn't you tell me that? Now there's a bit more emotion in what I'm saying. It's like, well, who the hell do you think you are to talk to me like that? That type of thing. And I can see that conflict happen. I really can.
Absolutely. So I've got two stories about that. Number one, the first one is how a word or gesture can mean something completely different in two different contexts, right?
Yeah.
All through my building career, and all through my life, right up until the point where I started working with cranes, that the thumbs up means it's all good, man. Yeah. Hey, thumbs up. We're all good. It took me, instantly I knew I had a problem. And also it took me a little bit of relearning, because when you're working with a crane driver, there's all hand signals. So I put a load down, or I'm ready to go, and I give them the thumbs up. That means jib up. That means bring the crane up on the jib. So we had some problems with that one, because the crane driver would be looking at me. I'd be going, yeah, it's all good. And he's coming up on the jib.
Wow.
We're in different worlds.
Yeah.
But so be careful of that one. You got to go back to the old okay. So, and secondly, I've bumped into this week. My uncle, unfortunately, had a bit of an accident here in Bali a couple of days before I got here, just down the road, in fact, fell over, broke a leg, and is going through the whole, if anyone out there has been involved or knows someone or been through themselves in getting hurt overseas, it can be quite a traumatic time. And like with anything that, and he's dealing with insurance companies and with the medics over here, have all been brilliant, lovely people. There's a bit of a bit gets lost in translation, and then trying to communicate by phone overseas to get everything sorted. When something happens to you, let's talk about, especially in the insurance industry, we use it as a stereotypical example. If you work in the insurance industry, you see this every day. You deal with this, and you maybe deal with a few cases every day as a case manager, or I'm not up to date with the correct terms, but I would suggest
manager, claims handler,
claims advisor, even as far as customer service, you would deal with this constantly. To my uncle, or the person that it's happened to, this is everything.
Yeah,
this is a consuming event, and so you have two different sets of emotions. This person who does it all the time, it's just another day.
Absolutely.
The person it's happening to, you don't understand what's happening to me.
Yeah.
This is critical. So you also have to try and, like you say, see it from their view of the world. It's very hard when this person's in a high state of distress.
Absolutely.
So, you've got that going on as well. So maybe not that all the time, but that kind of situation where you have to try and put yourself in the other person's shoes and either bring yourself up to their level or try and bring them down a bit as much as you can.
I don't think it's so much a thing of bringing people up or bringing people down. I think you're talking about emotional aspect or your level of understanding?
Level of understanding, emotions too, a little bit, because I think when you've got emotions involved, you can say the wrong thing. You're wound up. You're not getting your point across. You're in that fight or flight mentality, so you're not expressing yourself well. That whole kind of situation. So just that kind of side of things. Okay.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I would say though, because very often when I'm teaching people, I say meet your target audience at their view of the world. From time to time, people will, because I keep going back to the same concept, maybe 4 or 5 times in a day of training to really reinforce key learnings. Yes. And people say, often I say, where do you meet your target audience? And people sometimes go at their level. It's like, it's not necessarily down at their level.
It's not down, no.
But here's just to be aware that, I think that they say the best speeches that are the best speeches that have moved history have been made up of about 1,800 words. So they reckon world-class communicators will use about 1,800 words in their speeches and stuff like that, a maximum, but the same ones repeated. And those are all terms and words that are easily understood to 99% of people who speak any degree of English. So it's easy terminology, you know. So it's more just being very aware with the person, that effectively they are not your area of expertise. So I wouldn't dumb it up or dumb it down. I'd just make it's easier to understand, you know, easier to understand. And I'll tell you actually, Cuz, as well on this one, and for a lot of my clients are second, third, and fourth language English speakers. So their primary, secondary, or even tertiary language might not be English. And one of the challenges a lot of my clients come to me with, particularly people who want to start presenting, is they'll come and they'll say they don't feel confident because English is not their first language. And this is a beautiful reframe. And you have people there that are, you know, they speak, in my opinion, they speak fine language, fine English, certainly good, you know, good enough to be able to get the point across. And the reframe, you can sometimes see people's eyes, the sort of breakthrough that people have is when I start sharing with them, it's like they'll say to me, you know, I don't feel confident in presenting because I don't have the same vocabulary or the same terminology that everybody else does who might be a native English speaker. And then making that reframe with regard to the greatest speakers or the greatest speeches that have shifted history, where there was 1,800 words-ish that were used, you know, consistently. So those are all like the first types of words that you would use. They wouldn't be massively complex words.
Yes.
And the sort of the look of relief that goes across people's, you know, goes through people's body language, their physiology, when you can give them that reframe, and more importantly, when they actually discover it, when it's like it makes sense to them. It's like, you know, you don't, when I say you don't want to use complex language if you can avoid it, because effectively you want to make it as easy as possible for your target audience to understand what you're saying. And sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, well, I'm currently trying to get my head around learning a language here, and it's not going well. That's more my pronunciation of things. But when
that heavy Kiwi accent, bro.
Oh yeah, that doesn't help, bro.
Gizzy's strong, bro. Gizzy's strong.
It's a laugh, man. I tell you, it's a laugh. With those 1,800 words, I always think of it as, especially when you're trying to explain something to someone. I heard a person who wrote short stories said the perfect short story should not have any wasted words. You know what I mean? It should be more or less just the facts, as short as possible. And it's like, especially when you talk about it, the more you embellish, the bigger words you use, you can lose parts of your audience. I know when I'm listening to some speakers and even people in everyday life, they'll say a word that's not common, and I'll actually have to, my brain will stop and think, what do they mean by that?
Yeah.
And because my brain stops to think, I'm not listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, if you're using big words, big terms, you know, getting it out there, so you know, please use your vocabulary, but think about your target audience. You know, think about the message you're trying to pass on. If you're stood in front of a group of peers who are all, you know, we'll say reasonably on the same level as you, in the same industry or in the same sector, by all means. If you're not, if you're like yourself, who stands in front of people and speaks to people and presents to any 8 or 9 different industries, maybe even more, you have to try and, you know, wind it back a bit and keep it very broad, which is a term you always use as well, keeping it broad. And with people who don't have English as a first language, I've said this before, you have all my admiration in the world, because from what I can understand, if learning English as a second language, it's the hardest language to learn. It's really difficult to learn with all its tricks and its traps and its 3 words that mean 3 different things but sound the same and are written wrong, and so I got told off a couple of times by friends of mine. One Spanish girl told me off a while ago. I was working with her because I was speaking too quickly. for
in
her.
Spanish?
No. My English is bad. My English is terrible. And I'm speaking to her too quickly. And she told me off because every time that I spoke to her and asked her something, she would pause. And I would think, oh, I didn't explain myself. So I'd go again. And that would just, it wasn't the fact, she wasn't pausing because she didn't understand. She was pausing because she was taking what I'd say in English, translate it into Spanish so she could understand it, translate it back into English so she could reply.
Yeah.
And by then I'd already spoken to her again. So it wasn't going well. Slowing down, using pauses and things like that, please.
Absolutely. You know, cuz it's actually interesting. Something else, because we're talking about communication here, another trap that a lot of people fall into. And again, because we touched on presenting there, I'm going to go a little bit further into this, but this is a fascinating, when I stumbled onto this, it was a fascinating insight that I gained from helping people present better. Now, of course, presenting it can be very stressful. Well, it is, as always is. I mean, I don't think you ever sort of get rid of the nerves. I mean, even, if I go out and present the same workshop that I've presented 100 times before, I'm still nervous because I don't know exactly who's in the room, and, I want to make sure that I exceed all of their expectations. There's always a degree of stress, or maybe I'm going to call it excitement.
Yes.
But here's the interesting thing is, there's a degree of stress already in that situation. And when I started training, particularly presenters, particularly very technically minded presenters, there was a fascinating thing that we stumbled onto, which was they could start out the beginning of their presentation really well, like really, really, really well. And then what started to happen was, if the presentation started going poorly, they would automatically snap back to very technical terminology. Now, why do you reckon, mate? Why do you reckon that would potentially happen?
Probably because that's where they feel most comfortable. It's like standard operating procedure. This is what I am. These are my words. This is my comfort zone.
Especially when you've got people who are presenting to maybe senior level decision makers, people who can influence their career one way or the other, people you want to make a good impression on. If you're presenting as the head of your department for a particular business and you've got the executive leadership team that are there, you want to make a good impression. And very often I've seen people start presenting, and maybe the audience is a little bit standoffish, and that self-talk starts going, oh, they're not interested in what you're saying. They think you don't know what you're talking about. And then what happens is defense mechanisms start going up, and people go back to that comfort zone, which is, let me use very technical language to be able to show that I really know my stuff. And here's the thing, because I don't believe that thought process is even on a logical basis. I believe it's on an emotional basis. It's like we start feeling defensive, we go back to our own I don't want to use the term safe space, but our comfort zone. Let me use that term, comfort zone. And then we start talking about things that we're comfortable and confident in. But now here's the problem. If you're very, very, very technical and you start presenting to me, who's a senior level decision maker, I might not be very technical, but you start using terminology that I have to think about, and I have to burn cognitive energy to try and think about what the hell do you mean by that word, or God forbid I have to do a Google search on what is meant by that acronym and this. You've lost me. But it's interesting because they can start out, my presenters can start out really, really well, doing really well, fantastically. And then if they lose that battle to the self-talk, then they can regress. And then they start seeing people get, what the hell do you mean by this? And heads starting to tuck down, and that negative self-talk gets bigger and bigger. But it was a fascinating observation when I stumbled onto it. It was a trap that people were falling into. And, as soon as they didn't feel comfortable or confident up there, then effectively they could regress. Regress is probably the wrong word, but they could go back to using specific words that they were very, very, very comfortable with. And this is my domain. This is my area of expertise. No one can hurt me here. It was very interesting. And the thing was, I don't think people even realized that they didn't realize they were doing it. What they did realize, though, was they were starting to lose the audience.
And that can be, my eyes were open to this at Toastmasters by watching some people. When maybe you've prepared a speech or a talk or presentation, and you're expecting from your own point of view, you're expecting a certain reaction when you do when you say something, and you either don't get it or it's missed. Maybe you drop a joke in, a bit of a humor, and it's delivered wrong, and you don't get the reaction you want. It can set you off. Conversely, sometimes you say something and you don't realize that you've said it well, and everyone cracks up, or everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" And then that can lift you, push you to the next level, give you that confidence back. So, two-way street there, but I know precisely what you mean, especially with the humor one. Like if you put this bit of a joke in and you drop it and maybe you deliver it slightly wrong, or there's a little bit of a noise and it just goes, and you can hear it's cricket and everyone's looking at you like, oh no.
I advise beginner presenters or people who are wanting to present at a higher level of their presentations to stay away from jokes to begin with. We want to make a joke because we want people to like us. But the fact of the matter is when you make a joke, where they say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And if you're so terrified, if you're so rigid to tell a joke, it's like that joke is not going to land. And then, as you say, everybody goes crickets or like, what the hell did you just say?
And then they chase it. Oh my goodness! And they drop another one like, oh, don't keep going. Just back up. Look down at your notes and say sorry, and then just don't try and follow it up. That's it.
Yeah. No, I think that, and the other thing is as well as it is very rare that an audience, unless you're very well established and somebody's warmed your audience up already, and you've got an MC, and most of the people I'm training to present, they just have to do their normal presentations, But it's very rare that you're going to have a fired up hot audience ready to go. It's like even if I walk in to do training, everybody there knows that they're there to do training, and they're hopeful they're going to take things away. And maybe a colleague or a friend of theirs has worked with me in the past or something like that, and they're hopeful it's going to go well. It takes time to build rapport and build that connection. So I'm not making jokes to start with. I'm really not. It's
straight down to business. I use humor and making connections with people and random stuff on the street. I do it all the time in that scenario. But getting up in front of people with presentations and serious job stuff, straight down the line business. It may come in as part of it. There may be a situation where you can laugh along and relax everyone, but don't go chasing it.
Once there's rapport and you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable and confident, then I think then you can go. And here's the other thing as well. People will, with the recency bias that human beings have in our brains, it's more about how the whole thing ends rather than how it starts. Okay. Because I mean, even when I start speaking, I've got a big audience there. I've always got that adrenaline rush to some degree. And it's not, I know my content inside out, upside down, back to front and everything like that, but there's still that those nerves of that excitement, I think, because you want to exceed expectations. You want to give people a phenomenal return on their time invested. And, sometimes I can even hear my voice tremor a little bit, and I think that my audience can pick up on it from time to time as well. But that's normally the first 15, maybe the first 5 minutes or so, just until we sort of start getting some degree of movement there, which is
right. Yeah, correct. I've seen it in you, and I see it in a lot of people, and I think nerves are a good thing, as long as they don't become crippling. Nerves are a good thing. They keep you sharp. They make it's exciting. See them as excitement. When you get nervous, don't see it as coming failure or there's something to be worried about or stress. See it as excitement, ready to go. Use that positive energy off the nerves to get you going.
Absolutely.
And then, once you're in the swing of things and everyone's relaxed, then maybe drop one of your jokes. One of your good dad jokes you got going on there, Paulie. Drop one of those pearls. But
I don't know about that, but anyway. I prefer funny stories. Funny stories where
that's it. Little anecdotes.
Have meaning. Yeah.
That's it. That's correct. Now you did mention feedback, getting feedback, and I bumped into that this week when and it was something quite simple. I said to a lady at the Qantas Lounge when we're on our way through, I can't remember what she gave. Oh, she gave us a coffee of the day, which was like an iced latte. And I usually drink latte. My preference of choice is just black coffee. Just give it to me. I'm chasing the caffeine, chuck it in, and we'll see how we go. And it was delicious. This iced coffee that she gave me, and she walked back past. She was handing them out to a lot of people. And I said, excuse me, that was really good. Thank you very much. She goes, oh, it's so good to hear positive feedback. She goes, do you know how little we get? And I thought, really? Oh, that's strange. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah, people, well, it's good to actually hear it face to face. People nowadays will, put their glass down, walk away, and then give us the feedback online. They're not actually expressing it straight to the person themselves, which I thought was really quite a mind-blowing thing to hear. I didn't realize that because when I actually stopped to think about it, I thought that's a very positive thing to hear. Some feedback on what you're doing straight to your face.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of reviews and online and forums and everything rate your recent experiences with us. So is that something you're seeing that people are shying away from giving feedback, positive or? I mean, we'll talk about positive feedback here for starters.
Yeah.
Is that something you're seeing, Paulie? People are more happy to message online, put a review online as opposed to give it to you in the face, which is
no. I mean, the thing is that with the work I do, people, I make a point of making sure we get feedback. They complete the online forms, but before they go, here's the problem I see with just the scenario, and I only have obviously what you've just shared with us there, but that scenario is going to be difficult to get feedback on, because the thing is if I get a freebie, unless they're tracking me some way, and that might be through the airport internet connection, or they know somehow that I got this freebie of coffee. How are they going to remarket to me to provide feedback? I mean, it's not like I'm going to drink that and then think, oh, I must remember to go and do a Google search and find their website and go and leave a review. I just don't think that's part of human behavior. I think if somebody requests feedback and you've got a part of a system and a procedure to do it, or maybe some retargeting that obviously is big online right now. But as far as the feedbacks that we get, as part of the business, of course, it's crucial to get feedback with your net promoter scores and stuff like that. But people are fine to provide feedback. They'll provide it online. We have people who provide it face to face as well. So there's a variation of either click this link, and obviously it's done in complete anonymity. So you're hopeful that people have feel comfortable with providing that, but then also people fill out hard copies in the room as well, depending on the actual event. So and then again, there's people that reach out after the training, particularly when they apply stuff and it's just like, I can't believe this stuff's actually working, and it's like we're getting traction here, and it's like that's absolutely awesome as well. But I think it would be very difficult. And again, because I'm only talking based off the info that you've provided me with there, but I think it's, if somebody gives me a freebie, and I think about it going to the train stations, and very often busy train stations, people are handing out samples of different things. If I use that sample, like these little energy drinks or something like that, if I use that sample, I would not probably be I'm guessing the promoters would not be saying, okay, leave us a feedback on our website, because the client journey would just have to be too extensive. But I think what it might be is if I've tried a sample and then let's say were you at the airport when this happened?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the airport, if I'm at the airport and I try a sample, and let's say I'm a frequent flyer, I go to the airport a lot, and then next time I go to the airport, I see a pop-up shop with pop-up store with one of those, their coffee and their branding, I might well go and buy it because I've already tried it. So, but as far as, I've tried this and being that blown away by it, I need to get on the phone. When I get onto the plane and access the Wi-Fi, then the first thing I need to go and do, I think it's a bit of a client journey there. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know.
No, it's just the way she was quite surprised. I actually said to her face that it tasted good. Like,
yeah.
So thanks for that. Very good. She goes, oh, I'm not used to the feedback.
Yeah. No, okay. That's nice. That's nice. That's you doing your cusbit, mate.
Well, yeah, maybe. So that got me thinking as well. What about what about communications with negative feedback or constructive criticism? That's I think maybe that's something that comes about with lack of communication or poor communication is the way that can be delivered, like bad news, the way that can be delivered as well. Yeah, that can cause some strife.
Well, bad news is one thing. I think bad news would be, just the way I've heard what you've said with regards to bad news. That might be a little bit of a shock. It might be something I didn't expect, which would be a different approach to if I'm thinking about corporate feedback and business feedback. So somebody you maybe work with and they're providing you feedback on the service or providing you feedback as an employee or what have you. Yes, there are a couple of things. Firstly, I think there's a lot of people who don't want to receive negative feedback. I'll get into that as well. But secondly, I think that there's a lot of leadership that I see that are terrified of providing constructive criticism because they don't want to offend people. And this is one of the things that really we need to get onto, because if we can't deal with that, if we are shying away from something because even though you're my boss, you come to me, it's like, Paul, you don't want to give me feedback because you're terrified of what could happen, or my feelings get hurt, or I explode, or, very often we can go mentally, we can catastrophize. But, and there's ways of being able to communicate this stuff. There really is. There's ways of being able to communicate it so that we don't get that explosive negative reaction I think a lot of people are terrified of. But here's the other thing. And again, this is why I'll die on this hill, man. I'll die in this battle, is if people's professional self-esteem is not in the right place, anything but positive feedback very often is going to feel like an attack to that individual, which is crazy. And it shouldn't be like that. It's like you're paid money to be here, to work here. We're buying your time. But the thing is if my professional self-esteem, and you folks, if you listen to this, you regular listeners, you've heard me talk about this all the time, then it doesn't feel like feedback. It feels like a attack. And then, of course, if I feel I'm attacked, then one of three things is going to happen. And when I'm saying me, I'm not talking Paul Harrison. I'm talking about me as the individual. If I feel it's an attack, I'll do one of three things: become defensive, become aggressive, or shut down. One of those three things. And that doesn't work well for anybody. And I'm seeing people becoming more terrified of providing the feedback or receiving the feedback than actually doing it and having negative outcomes. And I think a lot of the time we can make these things bigger in our heads than they really need to be. And that fear is a massive driver. So I think that there's a lot of the time people who are receiving feedback. And again, this is why I'm still to see a high-performing team who don't have good professional self-esteem, aka see the value they bring to the table. Because as soon as you and we see the value we bring, we both know that we're good at what we do, and we're consistently looking to improve, then anytime you turn around to me and say, Paulie, listen, you can make improvements here. It's like, okay, guys, I'm on it. I got you. Thank you. I appreciate that, because I got blind spots too. And it's the real life app, because you and I could talk theory all day and we could say, yes, we should always be open to feedback, but that's not what I can focus on. We can't focus on what should happen. We have to focus on what does happen. And what I see happening is I see a lot of people concerned when it comes down to it, particularly new and emerging leaders. How do I provide feedback and not get that explosive negative reaction that people are terrified of, or cause some irrevocable or irreprovable, God, I'm using all the terms today, some negative impact that just lasts forever, and it's a real concern. It's a real concern that I see. And it's a real concern that I think a lot of businesses are starting to realize now as well. Because here's the thing: if my boss needs to come and have a chat with me with regards to something I'm not doing right, that problem is my work and the problems that are being built on by my work not being up to par. Those problems don't get smaller; they get bigger as time goes on. We can brush them under the carpet for the fear of hurting Paul's feelings, or we can get it done. And again, folks, everybody will know this. When we're talking about feedback, in theory, it should be fine. We should be able to do that. but we can't just work in theory. And I have to deal with what the real challenges are, what actually happens with the application, not just the theory of what should happen. So, correct. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, my man.
It does. And it's made me think about the real world application of leadership and coaching, and maybe mentoring a little bit. From my own personal point of view, the last month or so, I've been training some new guys up at work.
Beautiful.
And they've been going well. It's not been going well for me because they've taken my favorite job in the world.
Yeah.
And I have to stand at the bottom. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not good at being stood around. And I've had to teach them. Now, it's easy when you think about it. Yes, you can give feedback. Yes, you can coach someone. You can tell them how to do it and you can explain to it. If you sit across the table from each other. In this instance, they are 3 stories in the air and a knuckle boom with lots of noise going on around. And I'm trying to provide feedback, constructive criticism to how they're doing or to how they should be doing. And remember, they're newbies.
Yeah.
And I can't get up there and help them. So my communication was lacking and my words were getting shorter and shorter and my vocabulary was getting shorter. And I had to learn from that. Because the real world application was, you have to speak nicely to people and you have to, it's hard. You got to throw your voice 10 meters in the air with a lot going on. Try and keep it as simple as possible, your message, get it across, those kind of things. I was very lucky that the guys I was working with, when they came down, we had smoke or we had lunch. I had not so much time to calm down, but time to think about how it's delivering the message and then do a bit of a debrief. Like, listen, my fault for not making it clear. It's hard for me to make that clear because the other thing that we had was I've been a tradie for a long time and you can use leverage in your tool. You kind of got the logic to see what's going on. I've been doing this job for a little while now and it's hard to pick up straight away because it's such a unique little corner of the world. It's very niche. Mm-hmm. So trying to explain that as well, when it's high pressure situation, there's a lot going on, high risk work. So I was lucky because the boys I'm working with were able to come and say, listen, we were able to sit there and I'd go, listen, I didn't explain this very well. This is what I mean by it. They go, okay, I'll get you now.
Yeah.
So real world application is never going to be the same as classroom or in theory, like you said. And it's also a case of the experience of it. If you've never gone through it before, then you don't know how to react. You don't know what to do in that situation because you're a newbie. I was a newbie at coaching these guys on doing my job. And but I'm over that little bit of a hump now and I'll be crashing into the next one shortly. So I'll keep you updated on what happens there.
That's a fantastic observation for you to take on though, because it could have been very, very easy for you to just say, oh, you guys are a bunch of idiots. You're just not getting it. But you reflected on that with regards to, okay, you realized that you were starting to get shorter and shorter with your terminology. Maybe you said you were becoming a little bit frustrated with it, but that's on you.
Yeah.
Fair to say?
Yeah. That's on me. That's not their fault. So I need to, and not only is it on me, this is something we've talked about before with delivering feedback. The other side of delivering feedback is trying to tell the truth. Yeah, not being just having a yes man or telling the person what they want to hear. You need to understand that giving someone feedback or constructive criticism, how we're saying it, is getting the truth is, if you don't tell them the truth, the result's on you. If like you said, if it gets worse and worse, if you're not going to tell someone they're doing something wrong, that's going to compound and get worse at the end. That's your fault in a way. If they can't see it, like if your blind spot, like you said, if I don't help you with that blind spot, you'll never see it. It could get worse. If I do, or when I do tell you the truth, like, Paulie, you're missing this, I think. Maybe coming from this point of view, your reaction to that is out of my control to a certain extent. And I don't mean just walk in the room, throw a hand grenade down and walk out. I mean, it's also the way it's delivered. So there's a little bit of that going on as well. And it's a balance between those things. But realizing when you're in that situation and trying to provide that feedback sometimes can be very hard. Actually realizing you're in that situation in the first place is
absolutely. And Kaz, I think you raise a phenomenal point there, mate, which is which is, you use the term walk in, deliver the hand grenade, and walk out. No, but you're right on the money, mate. You're absolutely perfectly on the money. And here's what I see as well is people are not always elegant. They don't, we've all been in situations before where we've said or done something and we think, geez, if I was to look back on this, I could have made some improvements on how I approach that. Now, if we're all being honest about it, we've all done that type of thing.
Yes.
But here's what I reckon is, and I say this to my clients a lot of the time, is like, I've got what I have to do, I believe, is I have to keep you in a positive, empowered mental and emotional state. Because if I can do that, I will bet good money on you that you will pick the right words, say the right thing, and get the right outcome. However, to your common thing that happens, and what happens regularly, walk in, throw that grenade and walk out, that is not what I would refer to as elegant communication. And I believe the reason why people do that is because human beings are away from pain towards pleasure motivated. So are away from discomfort towards pleasure. It's exactly the same as why most people don't present very well. It's because you're going into something that you're telling yourself, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm terrified. Yeah. I'm going to feel uncomfortable because it's confrontational. Even as a leader, I've got to share this. And it's like, okay, to hell with it. Let me just rip that Band-Aid off, and let me just pull that pin and let it go. And then we don't think about it with regards to, okay, how am I going to present this to really reinforce this well with my target audience, the person I'm talking to? How am I going to do that? Because we're so close to that fight or flight. It's like we're not going to be elegant with our communication. And I see this as a real challenge with peer-to-peer feedback, especially if there's not what we might call a culture of feedback. And I know there's some sort of different contexts around that, but effectively a lot of emerging leaders as well. I have to focus on it so much when I'm training emerging leaders. I have to get them into a state where we realize this is nothing personal. Okay. But I can't just say this is nothing personal. I have to really be able to create those reframes so people can think more clearly, say and do what they need to say, and they feel comfortable in that environment. It's like, this is how you set it up so you're not going to get that negative reaction. And I think that's
precisely. Yes. To use your words, it's how you frame it. Yeah. It's how you frame the start of that feedback, softening the blow, so to speak. I've found this kind of approach will tend to work if you've already walked that road. Yeah. Like if you've got someone coming through, it's something along the lines of, mate, that wasn't the best situation. I've made that mistake myself.
Beautiful. Love it.
One of my favorite lines is, that's not going to work. Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've made more mistakes. That's how I learn my stuff. Yeah. Like, you're going to make mistakes. Realize that. And once you realize you make mistakes, you realize other people make mistakes too. And you can't hold it against them. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
So being able to side with them a little bit shows a bit of a connection as well. Like, listen, mate, that wasn't the best. This is why that happened. I've done it too. The only reason I know is because I've stuffed that up as well.
Yeah.
I did it bigger than you though. You know what I mean? So there's that kind of a finding that connect. That'll work in the situation where you've walked that path, so to speak. You know what I mean? And you can kind of soften the blow, reframe how you're going to deliver the criticism, the constructive feedback, and help soften it that way, if you're lucky enough to have that situation.
Absolutely. Cuz, what would you say if I was to say that people will be more open to feedback as long as they feel it's not an attack on their character?
100%. 100%.
Because you really put it well. It's like, that's not going to work. Ask me how I know. I just did.
Ask me how I know, bro.
It's not an attack on my character if you and I have both made the same mistake. But if it's like,
because you've got something in common, and you hold yourself in such a some people, like myself, I hold myself in such a high regard in terms of what I want as the outcome for others, what I want others to see. I need it to nearly be match grade perfect, and if it's not, I'm very hard on myself. But I'm also quite open to learning, which is a bit of a quandary. But if you make the feedback or you deliver it as an attack on that person, their character or their beliefs or their maybe the pride that they've got in that work, look out.
Absolutely.
You got to, you can be on the wrong end of a hissy fit. So that's something you need to well, it's something that I need to work on as well when I'm training and coaching. I have to really try and work on that bit. So
it becomes a lot easier when you realize that people, because again, I think to your point there, if you attack someone on their values and beliefs that they hold, when I say values and beliefs, what I'm talking about, particularly in the professional environment, is their beliefs about themselves. Okay, what they're good at, that they're conscientious, that they are hardworking, etc., etc., etc. Because obviously we're talking about work related. But if you turned around, if you turned around to somebody and said, "Well, you stupid. How would you not know that? Are you stupid?" It's like, now that's an attack on me, and it's like got to be one of three things. And I know to the audience they wouldn't say that, because anybody who's listening to this podcast has probably got quite a growth mindset. Okay, also a lot of tolerance, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Okay, but effectively is like, if somebody's got certain values and beliefs that they hold about themselves, and you attack those values and beliefs, now we've got problems. But again, I think it very often, from the attacker's point of view, I don't think it's a logical thought process. I'm convinced you've got somebody who's got a lot of, if you've got the leader providing feedback in an unelegant way like that, it's because they've just been hammered by their boss, and now they're in an unresourceful state. It's like, what's wrong with you? How would you not know that? Okay, it's not our greatest moment there. So again, I think the self-management, the self-awareness aspect, these are big things. Again, we can all think of times we've let it slip a little bit, but it's that work.
Precisely. And you've encouraged me to stand back and watch conversations, watch them unfold. You learn a lot from, like you say, people watching. And really watching and thinking and listening as something's unfolding, because you start to see patterns. And quite often you get situations like this where a superior or even a work colleague, they drop a bomb. They just chuck the grenade. And I think to myself, I'm guilty of it. Hands up right here, number one, guilty. But when you see it happen, you think to yourself, what were you hoping to achieve? Like, what were you thinking? Obviously maybe they weren't thinking, but what were you hoping to achieve by delivering it like that? You're not going to get the desired outcome. You're not helping that person. You've busted up that bit of relationship. You've had a bit of conflict now. What's this going to lead to? You think it could have been done so much more elegantly or smarter, with more. You end up with a better result at the end of it. And the people in collaboration. So
absolutely,
something to think about,
100%. And I'll tell you this as well. Communication is so difficult to do, because I think, firstly, and the only reason I talk like this is I talk about this type of stuff is because I think I've had a lot of degrees of contrast with this. Is prior to learning about anything professional development based, my mind was a nightmare, man. I mean, it was such a bad place. It was a horrible place. And I think a lot of people are doing that. I think that's a natural default setting. It's like, you dwell so much on the times you messed up. You dwell so much on, the times where you got things wrong and where you were a disappointment and this, and it becomes an evil place. I think people wear a good facade from time to time, but you can tell when people are online, when people are aligned and when people are not. But then finding out about professional development and how to use your brain, and here's the other thing I've got to say. Yes, it is a lot of work, but you can get some very good short returns by, that learning curve is very steep to start off with. After a while, then it starts to sort of taper off, and you get small little incremental improvements. But just learning how to think is, it's such a freeing thought process, man. It really is. It's so phenomenal. And learning that, if you keep beating yourself up because you focus on that negative stuff that you've done before, it's like, actually being able to shift how you focus on certain things. It becomes really empowering, man. It really does. Because I'll tell you, when we're thinking negatively like that, and we think we blame everybody else for everything else that's going on in our world, and we become, that malicious, it's not a good, that word toxic is too often used. It's very, very often used. but your mind becomes a toxic place. It really is. You know, and you start hating yourself for how you think and stuff like that as well.
Precisely. We spoke about this last week, but you got to love yourself first, your inner self-talk, and we went down that rabbit hole a little bit. But I believe that the reason growth mindset, that the learning curve is so steep at the start, is part of it is because, and everyone has talents, and maybe they can't see it. It's around communication.
Yeah,
we've talked about this, where everyone does things that they don't realize they're doing it, and it's not until you become aware of it. Like you talk to me about the way I communicate with people, how I make connections. We've done some trainings together where people have come to us and gone, I didn't even realize I was doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you're teaching me stuff that I already know that I'm doing subconsciously.
Yeah.
When you shine a spotlight on that, or get a spotlight shine on that, and you then become aware of it, even though you've already been doing it, you become aware of it and you start to use it and consciously think about applying it and see the results. Massive uptick in your growth. Absolutely. and you're learning, and you're like, whoa. So switching that on and, learning to think.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that I don't think there's enough focus on that, actually being able to learn how to think and how to use your mind, because once you do and you start getting out of your own way, you start having a lot less stress. Here's the other thing, a lot less stress, and resiliency becomes a big thing. It's like, it's people go through tough times and stuff like that, but then you meet people who've been through real like tough times, just horrendous. And I remember a few people that I've interacted with, and just thinking, how the hell do you keep even moving forward? I'm not even talking about professional life now. I'm talking about like personal life. And it's like, and some of these folks they've been through so much, and it's just like that resiliency is through the roof, because, at the end of the day, they realize that no one's coming to help them, and so they have to be able to do it. It's not like somebody who then goes, you post that you're upset on social media and somebody, there, and you feel some degree of, gratification back. But it's like that resiliency, and where that comes from is just, yeah.
It is. And I've had a little bit of that, a little bit of an aha moment over the last few days, especially since going away on holiday, where we talked about it, where you can get into a situation in your life or work where with me, it was work. It became encompassing. I really concentrated on giving it a red hot go for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a lot of time off, and it's been very, you can't see the forest for the trees. I've been kind of a work bubble, made a lot of sacrifices outside of that, with a few certain goals in mind. And I've ticked off a few of those goals. I've got more to come, and I've added some more to the list. But now that I've been able to step back away from this bubble that I've been in, when I was in that bubble, we refer to it as I've got a certain amount of energy for the day, and I need to be careful with that energy and use it for what I need to focus on. I can't afford to waste it. And there's been a lot of things that I've been wanting to think about that I haven't had time to process, and I've purposely just put them in the back of the mind, written them down or something. It's got to be something I'll come back to later. And the last 2 days, I've just been, now that I've switched off from work, so to speak, I've just been flooded with these thoughts and able to process them. And I'm amazed at how quickly I can process them and think, oh, that's what I was doing. I was doing that. It's decisions that I've put off as well that were dragging on me that I didn't realize. All of a sudden I processed, oh, sweet, I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that, where you can, if not having the time the quiet time or the space or the place in your life to think and process some thoughts, and it can be kind of debilitating and can keep you away from what's actually going on. So the ability to be able to step back. I know I'm saying this from a hotel in Bali, and I'm very blessed.
You've worked.
I'm very blessed, but to even be here is a blessing in itself. But being able to step back and put some context in it, and step out of the bubble and go, whoa, this is different. You get these real aha moments, and you can see your progress. I can do that now. you can be kind of proud of yourself, and then you can go, well, what about if I try this and go this way? So there's been a bit of that going on, so that anyone who's in this, that kind of situation, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, keep going. You're going to come out of it so much stronger. Just when you think it's unbearable and you can't go anymore, you're about to take it to the next level. So don't quit.
Breakthroughs,
Just don't quit.
Well, everything you got there, bro, is well deserved and well earned. Good on you.
No, it's been a tough time, but we got there. So stay tuned for what's coming next. I tell you, it's going to be a cracker.
Absolutely.
Well, Paulie, there's some stuff that we touched on there. There's probably still a lot in the bank on this one, but we can come back to this because, like you said, communications, ability to think, and communications are at the heart of majority of the problems in the workplace. And it's a topic we could probably, like with everything, and like with me and you, we could just keep talking for a while, couldn't we, bro?
Absolutely, bro. 100%. Always a pleasure, never a chore. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. I love your line. I've got more patience than you've got questions. Well, I've got a few questions for you, buddy. Don't you worry. I'm going to challenge that one. To everyone out there, thank you as always for all the feedback, all the support. We love hearing that we're not only that you're taking your time, precious time to listen to us, but also take the time to give us some feedback. It's great.
Absolutely.
When we're nearly at our goal, Paulie. We are nearly at our goal, mate. Oh, well, we're nearly at the first step of the ladder.
First step. Let's keep that for the down low, yeah?
Yes. Won't be hard to figure out. We're simple folks. Thank you all very much for your time. Paulie, thanks for your time and insights. As always, I'm going to go and find a scooter and a nice little Balinese meal to eat.
Fantastic.
Everyone, take care. Have a great week.
Thanks for your time on holiday, cuz. I appreciate it, man. Fantastic.
No, bro, it's not a holiday, mate. I'm a digital nomad now. This is what I do. And yes, folks, this is the best shirt I could find. The other one's got food down it from yesterday, and either that or it's a singlet. So, sorry. I'll go and buy myself a nice shirt.
There you go. You got it.
Take care, Paulie. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much. See you all soon.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.
Yeah.